Hey y'all, it's your legal bestie, Attorney Simone, and I am here with day 2 recap of the Diddy trial. I'm going to try and keep this short. My goal is actually to have this under 20 minutes. I know there are some other vloggers who are there who are doing like hour-long breakdowns, but the way my ADD is set up, I'm going to pull this down for a second. The way my ADD is set up, I don't really have the patience for that. And I also got a lot going on. I'm actually in my pajamas, as you can see. The backdrop here in honor of this trial is a jail cell, because we know Diddy hasn't made bail. So he is currently in a jail cell. However, I don't know. At the end of this, he might be given free. Let me know where you're viewing us from in the chat, and feel free to place any questions that you might have in the chat. I'll do my best to try and answer them. But let's get right into it. All right, so today was the first day that Cassie took the stand. Now, before she took the stand, her attorney late yesterday had filed a motion because basically her attorney did not want the press or the other members of the courtroom to be able to see the sex videos that are going to be shared with the jury and shared with counsel. As of the end of trial today, the judge tentatively approved that. So in other words, the jury's going to be able to see and hear it. Counsel has already seen and heard these videos. But because they're allegations of basically involuntary acts, her counsel, Cassie's counsel, the same counsel that got her the settlement, argued to the court that this should not be shared with the press. Now, the press actually filed a motion requesting that perhaps 3 members of the press pool, so for example, someone from NBC, CBS, and Fox, they didn't say exactly who it would be, but 3 members, the proposal is that 3 members of the press be allowed to observe the videos and listen to whatever it is. And then to the extent, they want to, they could write articles about what they've observed or watched. And the judge has said no initially. And the press's point is that, hey, this is a public trial. This information is pertinent to the public. And actually, Diddy's lawyers are the ones who said, hey, they should be able to see it all. Let the world see it all. Diddy's lawyers argued that, hey, this is just porn. It's no different from porn. Remember, they are trying to paint Diddy at these freak-offs as no different than a porn star director. He's just sitting back and watching the jizz flow, directing people to apply more baby oil when they're not glistening. Cassie did testify today that he literally would stop her if he felt she was not glistening enough with the Johnson & Johnson's baby oil. That, yes, they did confirm the brand. And somebody said they're traumatized by her story. Oh, yeah. So he's just sitting back, jizzing, watching, letting the bodily fluids fly. What? Ew. Cassie even discussed that he was this obsession with lube and oil that sometimes she'd have to apply it like every 5 minutes to his satisfaction. At one point, he even had his staff buy an inflatable baby pool, put it in the hotel room, and fill it with lube and baby oil, and had to get in there with her shoes on and the clothes, whatever. I don't know, lingerie, or whatever. Yes. She had to get up in this pool, and that they asked her what it smelled like. And she said bodily fluids. He would have candles going, sometimes lights. So it was a room smell of Badussi with lube lying dormant and baby oil everywhere. Yes. So to recap, the judge has said as of now, he's going to say, no, the press isn't going to be able to observe these videos. However, he said he's going to allow each lawyer to submit responses, rebuttals, whatever their position is, because the prosecutors are in agreement. Basically, the prosecutors were the ones that initially moved the court and said, hey, we want this to be closed off. We don't want these videos to be shared. And Cassie's lawyer for her civil case was in agreement, also submitted something in support of that. It makes sense that the prosecution is asking for this because the prosecution always wants their witnesses to feel as comfortable as possible to get up in there and testify. Okay, before I go any further, don't forget my website here, SimoneRedwine.com. Tomorrow night, I will be doing a free webinar on so you think you want to go to law school? It's never too late for law school. This is a session especially for non-traditional students, so grown folks. Those are not 21. Those are grown, thinking about going to law school. Head to SimoneRedwine.com. Right there at the top of the first page, right by my picture, you can RSVP for free. All right, going back. So she has recapped some of, what takes place at the freak-offs. What's interesting is she said, it started off with, just one. I think she was approximately 22 when there was the first one. And that Diddy explained to her it was part of his attraction to voyeurism. Now, let me tell you about my experience with voyeurism. One time, was I on drugs? One time when I was on drugs, I dated this boy and he fat fished me. Okay. By drugs, it was Adderall. Okay. I've never done an illegal drug in my life. I'm scared. Well, except for a little ganja, but that was legal where it was at. Anyway, I dated this fat boy by accident. It wasn't on purpose. He fat fished me, okay? He sent me photos of back when he was physically fit. Then he lied, said he broke 2 ankles and hadn't been in the gym, gained about 60 pounds. It all went straight to his belly, and his belly went over his belt. It was a travesty. Well, he told me he had this thing about voyeurism. I said, well, what is that? He said it's where he basically would like to watch his woman with other people. I said, well, who are these people? And he's like, whoever you want to be with. I said, why would I want to be with anybody else if I'm with you? Yes, you're fat, but we're going to work through that. I'm going to cook for you. You promised me you're going to get back into the gym. You said your ankle is healed. We were going to do Weight Watchers or whatever it took. Anyhow, what he kind of explained is that he had a horrible heartbreak, like, I don't know, when he was a teenager, and that he felt like if you give the other person permission, like to be with other people and you control the environment and all of that, that basically that was attractive to him, that turned him on. And I thought there was a whole bunch of things wrong with him. And I thought, this is a weird, but he was rich. He ran a hedge fund. And at the time I was poor. So I said, we're going to take this as far as it's going to go. And, it didn't go too far, but I say that to say that Fisher, okay, that Fisher, I know way too much about voyeurism, and it's anybody who wants to do that, like Diddy is doing it, and like this fat boy wanted to do, something ain't right with him. He ain't right in the head, okay. That man still, you know how I know that something's not right with that boy. He's still kind of fat, but that boy is so rich and still nobody wants him. He's black too. Black ladies don't want him and white ladies don't want him. Mexican ladies either. Nobody wants that man. Something is wrong with him. All right, now back to Diddy, because there's a lot wrong with him as well. I said your fate will work through this. Okay, gotcha. They'll bring up him. I'm looking at the comments. I'm using a smaller screen, so forgive me. I almost said I knew I shouldn't have clicked because I knew I'd be informed and entertained. I was going to bed. No, I'm going to keep it short. Like I said, I told everyone earlier, I'm trying to keep this under 20 minutes because we're just going to get to the high points. So yes, so she outlined basically a variety. She went into more detail. Yesterday, there was the S worker. He was the Mandingo warrior type. He had a real big head. That guy that took the stand yesterday, and he talked about some of the S trafficking. Now, I'm sorry, about the freak-offs, not trafficking. Now, let me be clear. Yesterday, the person that took the stand, Daniel Phillips was his name, he stated that Cassie wanted him to, TT in her mouth. Cassie today took the stand and said the opposite. Somebody was coming all on my Instagram. Is this a correct recap? Because that's not what I read in the transcript. First of all, you read a clip of a transcript that was a clip from a clip of what the defendant said. I am telling you components of both sides. So I want to share with you today one of the most disturbing parts that occurred. The prosecutor asked Cassie, because she talked about how difficult some of these incidents were. They would last sometimes up to 3 to 4 days. The longest was 4 days. Prosecutor, she said one time she was even choking. Prosecutor said, why were you choking? She said, too much urine in my mouth. Who else urinated on you? Sean. Talking about in addition to the S workers. She said, did you want Sean to urinate on you? I didn't want anyone to urinate on me. How often did it happen? Often enough. Then the prosecutor asked, which hotel charged the most for damage to the room? The Intercontinental in New York. They redecorated the whole room for a ridiculous amount of money. Now, back to the urination. No, literally, that's what the prosecutor had to say. The prosecutor had, you know how much urination has to be involved for a U.S. attorney to be out having the witness outline where they're at and the damage to the room and then say, now, back to the urination. The judge says, Miss Johnson, only a few more questions, as in the judge is tired of hearing about this pissy party. He don't want no more of this pissy party. The USA says, now, why didn't you say no? Hold on. Yeah. Said, why didn't you say no? She said, well, it was obvious I didn't want to be on the ground being peed on by two grown men. Where did you find the escorts? She said, initially, Craigslist. Then she went on to say it started with Craigslist, then it went to Backpage. Let me tell you, Craigslist was what we had before there was ever Facebook Marketplace. And I just want, she also discussed that often condoms weren't used. Sean didn't want condoms used. He wanted her to just be this vessel for nastiness, okay? Just this vessel. I'm going to move this from the screen. Just a vessel, a pissy party, and wanted her to be a vessel for this pissy party. Now, oh yeah, Mackay said it was truly a mess. Talk about double entendre. It was truly a mess. No condoms, pissy party. And so I just want to be clear that today's testimony through it, she confirmed this wasn't something that she wanted. This was something that she did in order to satisfy him. Oh, there were so many disgusting. Oh, make it make sense. Said vessel, isn't it? Yeah, she was a vessel. She was a vessel. Ugh. I'm so grossed out. Y'all check out Make It Make Sense video. He's actually there. So he did a very in-depth assessment, analysis of this today. Yeah, no condoms. No, he didn't want, yes, no condoms. That part really disgusted me. Again, she was around 22 when this began. Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Oh, and she didn't get any breaks for this. There was often, she described there being blood, and the prosecutor said, well, why was there blood? She said, well, he made me do this on my cycle. Excuse me. And let me tell you this. Once that happened, once I heard those graphic descriptions, what really came to my mind, I got to put this on the screen. And I don't know if you want to call it victim blaming or what, but the first thing I thought about was this man right here, her daddy. Her mama and her daddy are still together today. Where was your daddy in all of this? Because I remember there was a portion in her civil complaint where she talked about running away and staying with her parents to kind of escape Sean, but then he started calling, harassing, what have you. Where was your daddy? You know, some men don't do shit like this to women when they fear their dads. My dad is fucking crazy, okay? My father was on Crime Stoppers. I expunged my father's own criminal record, and I'm not going to tell you what was on there. Statute of limitations is gone. No one can charge him for any of his offenses, okay? And that's one of the benefits of having a loco father. But throughout this, I am wondering, now, it's different. It'd be one thing if her father wasn't in her life and part of this, but her father has to feel so bad. He has to feel like he has failed her in a way such that she tolerated this long. And by what did she do? I'm not saying her dad didn't do anything, and that's the point. For 10 years, your daughter suffered in this way, and for whatever reason, didn't feel you could protect her. You got to feel like a sorry ass man. I'm not saying you should, because I don't know that backstory. Baby, my dad, my brother, she got a brother too. Round him up. He failed her. Yeah. It really seems like he failed her. Who's that? It seems like he failed in the same way, right? That men will say they're not, what's his name? Chris Rock says his number one goal is to keep his daughters off of the pole. I think even simpler goal for all fathers is I don't ever want my daughter to be in an abusive relationship and feel like she has nowhere to turn. Nowhere to turn. I am curious. Diddy must have been rolling some big dough that way. I think I read that allegedly, he gave money to her parents. I think he paid their mortgage or apartment or whatever they lived in. She did come from humble beginnings. They're like working people. I want to say they live in Connecticut. They live in like a suburb of New York. Hardworking. There we go. The dad's a retired firefighter. Sir, if you don't round up them dudes from the fire department and y'all didn't ride on that man, excuse me, y'all should have a relationship with some NYPD, with some FBI, with somebody coming up missing. If that was me, if that was my niecey poo. But anyway, let me get off that. Speaking of families, oh baby. Speaking of families, then we got to get to this part. Why are them little girls there? Why were them little girls there? That was my question. Now make it make sense in his report. He said that the daughters would come in and out. They weren't necessarily there the whole time. And I read that one of the first times that they left was when the male sex worker took the stand. Here's my issue. Oh, in that Diddy, then he saw the girls. He made a little heart. Be still and mouthed, thank you to the girls. You don't get your ass on. What kind of trifling father are you, Mr. Diddy, to even have your girls in that courtroom to hear these kind of allegations? My daddy wouldn't let me in there. Even if you're innocent, especially if you're innocent, your daughters don't need to. Yes, they're 18, but these little girls are still, the twins are seniors in high school. The other one, Chance, she'd be a freshman if she went to college, okay? She's of age. I don't flying fart. It's some stuff. Yes, they could read it. Yes, there are other sources of it. I just don't think that it was appropriate. I feel like it was very selfish of him to have those little girls in the courtroom. Y'all, but I want to hear y'all's thoughts. Do you think it was okay for him to have the daughters in? Now, I would say this. If I wanted the girlies in there, because he got a lot of family. How about everybody else? Nobody's going to be like, where are the three twins? Where are the little girls? Maybe they don't want to know their daddy's peeing in people's mouths. Maybe they didn't want them to know. He's having a little pissy party. Peeing in people's mouth. Making their mama's or their daddy's former girlfriend into a vessel. And they damn sure don't need to hear more evidence about how their daddy cheated on their mama her whole gosh darn life. Gosh darn life. I think so too. Somebody said having the girls in there is part of his abusive control. I think he probably didn't even conceive of it as far as how detrimental it could be to those girls. Make it make sense. Says absolutely not. The daughters and King Combs too. He seems a little slow. Oh yeah, King Combs. We know he's slow. Have you heard his music? That's slow boy music. That is slow boy music. Yeah. That was slow boy music all the way around. No, I just think that it is the epitome of arrogance to have those young ladies in there. Now, I will say this. If he were my client, I'd say don't have them in there. Or I'd say, why don't we wait till it's our turn to put on evidence? Because their witnesses are likely going to be witnesses that are going to talk about how he's a good guy. He didn't do this. They're going to be mitigating. So if they want to come and support, have them come when it's your turn to present people that are going to make, the other witnesses look like liars. But don't have them up there when they're talking about you're pissing in people's mouths and you're cheating on my mama. Now, let's get to the law real quick because I know everybody got to go to bed and y'all got stuff to do. Okay, so the question is, well, where's the RICO? People are like, all right, this is nasty, this is freaky, this is domestic violence, but where is the RICO? Now, what you have to remember about RICO is RICO requires what's called predicate offenses. In other words, RICO itself isn't the thing, but it's that you've committed multiple offenses that are part of the scheme. So simply what they're doing with Cassie and the S worker witnesses is they're laying the foundation of evidence of crimes. What Cassie discussed was absolutely, positively facts and evidence that support the charge. He is being charged with transportation for purposes of prostitution. Remember that charge. Transportation for purposes of prostitution. Now, that charge, he's only facing about 5 years for that charge. So if you look at it from the perspective of, let's start easier. We got a little in here from the S worker who talks about going from one place to another in the different cities where they would have him work and get paid, even though he's consenting. Hookers consent all the time. Doesn't make you any less of a hooker. Okay? Doesn't make you any less of a hooker. Yesterday, the male hooker said he would get paid $3,800 sometimes. And that if he couldn't get it up, because sometimes they couldn't get it up, it'd be 3 days long. Diddy today, Cassie testified that he even had her take Viagra. I was wondering what that do. Ladies, if you've ever taken Viagra in the chat, let me know. I dated a boy who did. Let me tell you something. That boy he knocked my pH balance all off the wazoo. Oh, it was off the Richter scale. I couldn't figure out what was going on. And I found that Cialis, Viagra, whatever it was, Viagra, in his little shaving bag. I said, oh, this is the culprit. And I showed a picture to my doctor. My doctor said, yeah, that stuff will, when it secretes and it'll get up in you, knock that pH. So y'all watch out. Don't do that. Okay. So yes. So just to clarify, with RICO, there's multiple culprits. We've heard evidence of transportation for purposes of prostitution. So for those who are like, I don't see it, they're starting there. I hope that makes sense. I think I've answered most of the main questions. Yes, I'm silly if you've never seen mine before. I am a real lawyer. I graduated from Cornell Law School. I've almost been practicing for 2 decades. I am a ridiculous person, but I live a really serious life. What I do is very serious, and I like to do it in a fun way. So if you like the content, please share, like, and subscribe. If you're just joining, roll it back. You need to hear about the whole pissy party. And tomorrow we'll see what more evidence do we see with regards to proving up the allegations. And I think, keep in mind, the easiest thing to start proving is going to be the transportation for purposes of prostitution. I think a lot of the witnesses are going to help build that up. And then we're going to start see the coercion, kidnapping, arson, and other elements. Y'all have a great night. I'm your legal bestie, Attorney Simone. And this is Girl, Is That Legal?